The initial call to 911 on November 7, 1997, revealed a scene of profound domestic horror. 13-year-old Stevie Bellish, returning home from school, found her 23-month-old quadruplet siblings wandering alone and bloodstained before discovering the brutalized body of her mother, Sheila, on the kitchen floor. First responders and Sarasota County Sheriff's detectives encountered a tableau of extreme violence, with evidence suggesting a sustained and savage attack. The absence of any signs of forced entry pointed strongly toward an assailant who was known to the victim, someone granted access rather than an intruder. This premise immediately steered the investigation away from theories of random home invasion and toward a deeply personal motive rooted in Sheila's relationships. The presence of the four unharmed but traumatized toddlers, their small footprints mingling with the bloodstains around their mother's body, added a uniquely cruel dimension to the crime, transforming it from a homicide into an act of psychological devastation witnessed by the most vulnerable of eyes. This detail would haunt investigators and underscore the killer's callousness. A meticulous forensic examination of the Bellish home revealed the terrifying final moments of Sheila Bellish's life, painting a portrait of remarkable courage. The attack had originated in the utility room, where a single .45 caliber round was fired at close range into Sheila's face. The trajectory showed the bullet passed through her cheek and exited her neck, yet astonishingly it did not kill her instantly. Defensive wounds on her arms and hands, along with blood spatter patterns, proved she fought back fiercely, struggling with her attacker into the kitchen, where a knife from a magnetic rack was used to slash her throat twice. In a final desperate bid for survival, and possibly to summon help for her children, Sheila dragged herself 15 feet across the floor, reaching the kitchen counter and pulling the telephone receiver to the floor before collapsing. This evidence of her tenacious will to live, fighting against overwhelming odds, deeply affected the investigators and framed the entire pursuit as a mission for a victim who had refused to go quietly. With the crime scene processed, detectives began the methodical work of investigating Sheila's inner circle. Her husband, Jamie, a pharmaceutical salesman with a partial alibi supported by time-stamped sales receipts, was scrutinized, especially after the discovery of life insurance policies. While he suggested a former pool maintenance worker who had made the family uneasy, forensic comparisons quickly ruled him out. The investigation then pivoted sharply to Sheila's first husband, Alan Blackthorne, a wealthy San Antonio businessman. The couple's divorce had been exceptionally bitter, spanning a decade and dominated by a vicious custody battle over their two daughters. Although Blackthorne was physically in Texas, his history of controlling, manipulative, and allegedly abusive behavior toward Sheila made him a compelling person of interest. However, with no direct evidence linking him to the Florida crime scene, investigators faced a wall, prompting a turn toward the neighborhood for any witnesses who might have seen anomalous activity that morning. The investigation's pivotal breakthrough came from an eagle-eyed gardener, Jake Mast, whose routine work was interrupted by a nagging sense of unease. He recalled a white Mitsubishi Eclipse circling the neighborhood, its driver clad in camouflage pants, an odd sight in the suburban setting. Mast consciously memorized the license plate YBR62G, a detail that would become the case's linchpin. When local database searches failed, the plate was run through Texas authorities, identifying the owner as 23-year-old Joey Del Toro, a San Antonio resident with a minor criminal record. Locating his parked car, detectives executed a search warrant and discovered a cache of damning evidence: the camouflage pants, later confirmed to bear Sheila's blood via DNA, a detailed map to the Bellish residence in Sarasota, and, most significantly, a .45 caliber pistol that ballistics would match conclusively to the bullet recovered from the crime scene. The physical case against Del Toro was solid, but his motive remained a complete mystery, revealing a troubling disconnect between the killer and his victim. The discovery of Joey Del Toro as the triggerman opened a new, more complex chapter. He had fled to Mexico. This international flight necessitated the involvement of the FBI, whose resources and leverage were critical in navigating the arduous extradition process. Concurrently, investigators in Texas began probing Del Toro's connections, leading them to his cousin, Sammy Gonzalez. Under pressure, Gonzalez confessed to acting as an intermediary. He revealed that a local golf bookie named Danny Roach had approached him with a photograph of Sheila Bellish and a proposal to have her beaten up for a sum of $10,000. Gonzalez, claiming reluctance to assault a woman himself, recruited his cousin, Del Toro. Crucially, Gonzalez stated the instructions later morphed, with Roach conveying that it no longer mattered if Sheila was merely injured or killed. This testimony was transformative, recasting the homicide from a direct act of violence into a murder-for-hire conspiracy, and shifting the investigative focus squarely onto who had commissioned Danny Roach. Unraveling the conspiracy's origin led investigators back to the golf course and directly to Alan Blackthorne. Danny Roach, they learned, was not just a bookie but an entrepreneur seeking financing for a proposed sports bar, and he viewed the wealthy Blackthorne as a potential investor. Delving into Blackthorne's past, detectives uncovered a deeply disturbing portrait of a manipulative and vindictive personality. Interviews with former spouses and associates described a pattern of psychological torment, coercive control, and alleged physical abuse. Sheila had reportedly endured humiliating sexual demands and witnessed his infidelities. Following their divorce, Blackthorne weaponized the custody battle, making repeated, often unfounded allegations to social services to harass Sheila. Her sudden, secretive move to Florida with her new family was understood by close friends as a terrified flight from his unrelenting persecution. This context provided the long-sought motive. Blackthorne could not abide Sheila's escape to an independent, happy life, viewing her autonomy as an ultimate betrayal of his dominance. To prosecute Alan Blackthorne, federal authorities employed a novel legal strategy using statutes related to interstate commerce, specifically the use of wire communications and travel across state lines to commit an act of domestic violence. This provided jurisdiction for a federal case. The evidence was meticulously compiled, telephone records establishing contact between the conspirators, forensic analysis linking the map found in Del Toro's car to mapping software on Blackthorne's home computer, and a critical photographic link. In a search of Blackthorne's mansion, agents found a set of pictures matching those used by the hitmen, including the exact birthday party photograph of Sheila that Danny Roach had shown to Sammy Gonzalez. This created an undeniable chain of evidence from the mastermind to the murder weapon. The poetic justice of Blackthorne's arrest on a golf course underscored how his leisure pursuits had become the conduit for his criminal enterprise. The federal trial of Alan Blackthorne in 2000 pitted a powerful narrative of wealth-fueled malice against a defense of feigned ignorance. Prosecutors meticulously outlined a timeline of manipulation, portraying Blackthorne as a sociopath who used his money to orchestrate a remote assassination, insulating himself with layers of intermediaries. The defense contended Blackthorne was an unwitting victim of Danny Roach's independent scheme, arguing the bookie acted alone in a deranged attempt to curry financial favor. The jury, however, found the collective weight of evidence, the financial nexus, the photographic smoking gun, and the corroborating testimonies of Gonzalez and Del Toro to be overwhelming and conclusive. The conviction was a landmark victory, demonstrating the potent application of federal laws to combat interstate domestic violence homicides, and it visibly shattered Blackthorne's carefully maintained facade of arrogant indifference. In a coordinated resolution, on the same day as Blackthorne's conviction, Joey Del Toro pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in a Florida court. His subsequent confession provided a chilling, granular account of the crime's execution. He described surveilling the Bellish home, watching Sheila interact with her children in an attempt to justify the act to himself, and the fatal moment of confrontation when she discovered him. His statement detailed the shooting, the struggle, and his flight, corroborating the forensic timeline and eliminating any residual doubt about the conspiracy's deadly outcome. The sentencing phase saw finality delivered. Alan Blackthorne received 2 life sentences without parole in federal prison. Danny Roach was sentenced to life, and Sammy Gonzalez, for his role as facilitator, received a 17-year term. The legal machinery had achieved a complete, if belated, institutional accountability. The legacy of Sheila Bellish's murder extends far beyond the court verdicts, serving as a tragic archetype of post-separation lethality and the extreme dangers posed by obsessive former partners. The investigation itself became a textbook example of multi-jurisdictional cooperation, seamlessly integrating the efforts of local sheriff's detectives, the Texas Rangers, and the FBI to solve a crime that spanned a continent. For Sheila's family and 6 children, the loss was irrevocable. Her toddlers grew up with only traumatic echoes of their mother, and her older daughters were deprived of her guidance. For the law enforcement professionals involved, the haunting images of a mother's final, fierce struggle and the silent testimony of the children's bloody footprints remained indelible, a somber reminder of the profound human cost embedded within every case file and the relentless pursuit required to secure a measure of justice.